There we go. Good.
Well, I'll call to order the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for 12th of January 2021. Welcome to the new year. I'd also like to welcome our new council members, Dr. Landry and Mr. Johnson. Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
We'll have as I was explaining to them earlier for the meeting, the upcoming meeting, we'll have a ceremonial swearing in. They've already obviously sworn and got the official paperwork all done, so they can be with us here today. And normally, what we would do in a situation like this is we would have a little get-together before the meeting. That's not going to happen for obvious reasons this time. So I encourage them to bring friends and family members to the meeting next time on Thursday if they're so inclined to do that. But again, we have to do the social distancing and all those kind of things as well. So with that, for today's meeting, the first item, it would be 2A, the January 14th, 2021 council meeting in the agenda. And obviously, I just mentioned we'll start with a ceremonial swearing in after the call to order. We'll do the roll call invocation, pledge, acceptance of the agenda, and then we go to the city manager report. Mr. Petichik, is there anything you want to share with us this afternoon?
Just that by Thursday, we'll have some more information on the status of our EMS substation design build project. And then we'll have a CCOM meeting in the morning, and I'll be able to tell you what we're doing there as well. So, those will be the main things.
All righty. Next item would be a public hearing item, and that is the liquor license. Ms. Adams, do you have anything to report?
Nothing but the usual. Mayor Mueller, members of council, this is an application for Series 10, which is beer and wine sales at the Chevron up on Fry, just west of Coronado. It's been closed for a while, but they've been redoing it. They're going to open back up, and the convenience store is the entity that's applying for this license. The posting of the public hearing was placed on the facility over 20 days ago. We have received no comment from the public, pro or con. The police department has done their background check and has no objection to this application going forward, and if approved Thursday night, it will be forwarded back to the state for final action.
Any questions for Mrs. Adams?
Oh, sorry,
Ma'am.
Gabby.
Still can't see you. You're right next to me.
I know. I know. The application said that, and you just said they're still under construction. That they'd be completed December 15th. Do they have a new date?
That I don't know. I can certainly try and find out before Thursday night.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll move down to new business, item number 3. And again, it's an application for extension of patio permit. Ms. Adams.
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this is an application for extension of premise for PC's Lounge submitted by Christopher Ginter. As you recall, a few years ago, we changed to an admin practice for temporary liquor license adjustments, but he's requesting a permanent extension of premise. They're building a patio outdoor area in the back of their building off of Highway 90. There was no requirement for a public hearing notice. That's why this is new business and not a public hearing. But the background check was done by the police department. It's an existing liquor license. It's just an adjustment to an existing liquor license. And if approved Thursday night, it will be returned to the state for final action.
Any questions for Mrs. Adams? Yes, ma'am.
Is it fenced?
It will be.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to be able to control the liquor on the premises.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what I was wondering.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Adams. Item number 4 is the approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for December 10. Any additions, corrections, completions, comments, questions on that item? Okay, and I think it's probably, in case our new members are wondering, it's appropriate for you to abstain. Okay, or if you were here, and you can obviously vote for or con.
I observed on the, on the telly, but I'll abstain.
But I think that's I think those are appropriate. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. And Planning and Zoning Commission appointments, and who's got this one?
Me?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Mayor
Oh,
Pro
yes,
Tem.
I do. Okay, so we have had 5 applicants apply for the one position for planning and zoning. So I've spent this afternoon interviewing all but one that I will interview after the meeting, and I will have a recommendation to staff to add by tomorrow.
Okay,
My understanding, as long as we have 24 hours.
yeah.
To put
so
on
it
the
can be posted.
agenda.
That's right.
So that's my plan.
So what happens here is that there's a recommendation that comes to us. If there's discussion, we discuss and either approve or add someone else to the position. Okay. Item number 6, Park and Recreation Committee.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. Like P and Z, we have 2 vacancies. 4 people dropped off or termed off, and we have 2 left. And we have 3 applicants. All of them have been on the commission. So tonight at our Parks and Rec Commission, the current members are going to select a recommendation for the top 2, and then I'll have names for us by Thursday, for the Thursday meeting.
Okay, well, we need to see him Wednesday.
Wednesday, Roger.
Got it.
I haven't submitted tomorrow. I'll email them to everybody.
Yeah,
so.
okay, we need to see him Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, next resolution is the appointment of Ms. Gray as the Mayor Pro Tem, and I guess I need to be the one to address this. Traditionally, the council has allowed the mayor to pick his Pro Tem, and it obviously has to be formalized, and this is a formal process to do that. I've selected Ms. Gray to continue as Mayor Pro Tem for the next 2 years, and it's only a 2-year appointment. So that will be the item up for discussion on Thursday. Any questions or further discussion? All right, item number 8, amending the intergovernmental agreement between Cochise County, Cochise College, and the Fire District. Chief.
Good afternoon, Happy New Year. Mayor Mueller, members of council, this resolution is to update the IGA between Sierra Vista Fire and Cochise College for the joint program between Sierra Vista Fire and the college to provide the highest quality training for all emergency medical services and the fire science students. And with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
And this is something we've done before.
Yes, sir, and this agreement is for 5 years with 1-year incrementals if any of the entities want to change or get out of the resolution.
Okay, questions for the fire chief? Mr. Jones? Yes, ma'am.
So we're not amending it, we're renewing it?
Yes, we're renewing it.
Because I was looking through for what changed, and I think what you just mentioned, the 5 years,
Yeah.
we did 3 years in the past. Okay. So maybe, do we need to change some of the wording when it says establishing an IGA, since this is not, we're not establishing a new IGA? Do we need that?
What does it say?
Sorry. The document is a new IGA. The old IGA is no longer in force. This will replace it, so it is, technically, it's a new IGA.
Even though it's all the same?
Yes.
Except for the, okay.
Yes. It's the same program, it's the same partnership. It's just solidifying it on paper and changing the terms so that we don't have to do it quite so often when we
Okay.
don't need to.
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for answering that, chief.
Thank you.
Good job. Any other questions for the chief? Thanks, Jill. Okay. The next is the item number 9, memorandum of understanding Cochise College for fleet maintenance and repair services. And we have our engineer coming forward here.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Happy New Year. This new memorandum of understanding with Cochise College will establish a mechanism whereby the city is able to perform maintenance on a 1997 Pierce 1,000-gallon pumper truck owned by Cochise College. The truck was previously owned by the city of Sierra Vista and was donated to the college for their fire science technology program, which the chief just mentioned. Since the city fleet department has background knowledge of the truck and its operations, it makes sense to continue having city mechanics perform the required maintenance. Labor and parts are billed at cost plus markup and therefore generate revenue for the general fund. The initial dates of the agreement are designed to correspond with the city's fiscal year in the event of any future rate increases. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mrs. Wassar? Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, has and I asked Chuck this yesterday, but I'm asking you now, is the college indicating interest in the fuel, or?
At this point, they have not, but those lines of communication are always open. I'm hoping that this might be
A catalyst?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes, sir.
that would explain in other vehicles throughout the agreement, so that was gonna be my question also, and I wanted to make sure the,
We'd love to have them participate in our maintenance
Exactly.
program and our fuel program, et cetera.
okay.
But obviously, it's their option, and we need to be able to sell it to them so that they know they can save money for their tax base, just like we save money for our tax base.
Good job.
Okay? Any other questions on item number 9, discussion? Okay, then that will move us on to the call to the public, comments and requests to council and the adjournment. So that completes item A unless there's anything. Okay, item B is the Proposition 207 background and potential code amendments for recreational marijuana dispensaries. And Jeff, I guess you're the man.
I am the man. I've been told I'm the man, so.
Okay.
You're our pot expert.
I know.
Leave it alone.
Yes, yes. I guess you could say that. It's funny you mentioned the browser history. When I was doing a lot of the research here at the city hall, a lot of the websites I went to were actually blocked. I couldn't even access them because of marijuana. So I was a difficult time researching. But I figured it out here. All right, so Prop 207, the facts. As you recall, the voters approved Prop 207 back on November 3rd, 2020. And this is known as the Smart and Safe Arizona Act. And this update here. Perfect. So what this does, of course, not only allows legalization of marijuana for adults over 21, but what it also does, it provides a smart and safe fund. So basically the license fees associated with the sale of marijuana, that there's going to be a 16% excise tax, which will be, that your state will charge to those folks that will be selling marijuana. And also private donations will help fund the Smart and Safe Fund. In addition, there was originally some confusion about this, but it is also subject to city sales tax rates of 1.95. So we will get sales tax as part of the dispensary sales of marijuana. However, the city cannot levy an additional tax rate for marijuana. We have to keep it at our existing 1.95% rate. So what does this money go to in terms of the Smart and Safe Fund distribution? Well, 33% will go to the community college districts. 31.4% will go to local fire and police departments, I'm assuming for enforcement purposes. 25.4% will go to the Highway User Revenue Fund. 10% will go to the Justice Reinvestment Fund, public and behavioral health programs. And then 0.2% will go to the Attorney General for enforcement of this particular legislation. So if looking at the background of Prop 207, what are some of the specifics regarding the marijuana legalization? Well, it allows individuals 21 years of age or older to possess, purchase, consume, process, manufacture, and or transport 1 ounce or less of marijuana. Now, the legislation also states that it prohibits smoking in public places being defined as any type of building that allows citizens or public to enter, such as Walmart, restaurants, any city facilities, things of that sort. And it also prohibits it in open spaces, such as parks, sidewalks, multiple use paths, or also in any moving vehicle. Now, the legislation doesn't specifically state that it's prohibited, smoking is prohibited on city-owned properties. So in discussion with the police department, one of the recommendations that you'll be asked to review and to recommend is that council add some language that would prohibit the consumption, possession, and sale of marijuana on all city-owned properties. That way, it's very, very clear that nobody can smoke or consume marijuana on any type of city facility, building, owned property, and that would include washes and parking lots, things of that sort. That wouldn't be covered under this other
But
legislation.
public places wouldn't be sufficient, I mean, isn't
Talking city-owned properties.
city
So we're
property.
talking-
City-owned properties, again, we're talking about washes, parking lots, things that are not within buildings.
So you're saying any easement too, is that what you're trying to define city, I mean,
Well, it'd be any, easements aren't necessarily owned by the city, but it would be anything that's owned, like the athletic fields, the, like I said, parking
Skate
lots,
park.
washes,
that would be a
skate
public
parks.
place though, an athletic field.
So
Okay.
parks are
Open
covered
space.
under open spaces, okay? But it wouldn't cover, like I said, washes, parking lots, those type of owned properties, which would not be, again, defined as an open space under the state law. So this language would cover, is kind of a catch-all for all city-owned properties.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question about, on some of like the city-owned buses. If I'm allowed to consume it, possess it, and this and that, I gotta be able to travel freely still, and if that's my only movement of transportation, if we try to make it illegal to have it in that city-owned property, then we're limiting somewhat travel some people can do, and I don't know if we wanna go that far, or if that was even in mind.
Well, keep in
Can't smoke it
Isn't
on
this
the bus.
in reference to smoking?
No, this is just
having
having
in your
it.
pocket.
Possession, consumption, and sale.
Possession, consumption, so, possess.
So if that makes
You
sense.
already can't in a moving vehicle. No moving vehicles. You can't be using it.
You can't use it in a
You
moving
can't
vehicle.
consume in a
Yeah.
moving vehicle, that would include buses.
So I don't know if, like, we say possession, are we saying if I have an ounce on me and I'm taking the city bus because I need to pick up groceries or I'm going to a friend's house, is that gonna be prohibited or not prohibited?
I understand your concern, and the way this is written, sale of city-owned properties. What do you think?
I think we can remove that concern, Jeff, by just eliminating possession.
Well, I don't think we're at that point right
Yeah,
now.
We're not
okay?
there.
Just
That's
going
more
forward.
for later discussion.
item.
And I understand, believe me, I understand the concern, but let's go ahead and get through what the rest of the requirements are. That's, the reason it's in red on that slide is because, that's a potential, not what's actually in the, current law or
Right.
current law that's not yet in
Yes, sir.
effect.
Correct. Yeah, we'll talk about this at the end.
Okay,
We
thanks,
have
Jeff.
Some discussion. All right, so Prop 207 also addresses cultivation at a private residence. So this is residences versus commercial dispensaries. So the way that the language reads now in the state law, that you can harvest no more than 6 plants. If one individual in the household is over 21, you can harvest no more than 12 plants if 2 individuals in the household are over 21. And any plants that are cultivated must be located in a completely enclosed building under lock and key. Now, it's pretty clear in the state law that this is for private use only. You cannot sell out of your house, okay? This is for private consumption only, all right? So nobody could get a business license or a home-based business permit to sell marijuana out of their house. That would be prohibited under state law. Okay. And then, of course, the large part of this presentation relates to marijuana establishments, which, again, these are the commercial dispensaries, which we're thinking about here. So the definition of marijuana establishment is a retail location where marijuana can be sold, cultivated, and manufactured. It can also be an off-site cultivation location where marijuana is processed and manufactured. It can also be an off-site storage location where marijuana is manufactured, packaged, and stored. All 3 of these are defined as marijuana establishments in the state law. Now, realistically, what we're probably going to see in this community is the first one. We're probably going to see a retail location where marijuana can be sold, cultivated, and manufactured. And if you look at many of the other jurisdictions in the community, the way they write their codes, they're really pretty much based upon the fact that the retail location will pretty much be what you're going to see in these communities.
I have a question on definition.
Yes, sir.
when they say marijuana, we're talking the plant, the fibrous material, are we talking extracts of chemical from marijuana, is that also included?
They are
For
both,
example,
they are-
the active components and THC and all the other stuff.
that is all included.
It's all included when you say marijuana, so we're talking candy, cakes, weed, whatever they wanna put together and purvey for the public.
That is correct.
Okay.
Everything. Correct. So these marijuana establishments will be licensed by the Arizona Department of Health Services. They will be a valid license for 2 years, and it will be renewable based on the fact that they are meeting all of the state requirements. Some of the things they will be doing, of course, they'll be tracking, testing, reviewing, labeling, and packaging, and looking at the security of the facility. All these things have to be up to their standards so they can continue to be licensed. From the city's perspective, what they've asked the local localities to do is to sign up on a zoning application, or not a zoning application, but a zoning form indicating that the dispensary is complying with the city's local zoning regulations. And once they get a copy of that, then they'll go ahead and issue that license. But the locality does have a lot of say in terms of the approval of some of these marijuana establishments. So the Arizona Department of Health Services will start accepting early applications January 19th through March 9th, and they'll start issuing the licenses shortly after this date. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this particular process here, early applications, and it took some research to figure out what exactly they were meaning here, but the way the code reads is under this early application process, the Arizona Department of Health Services will only be issuing 2 licenses per state, or per county, okay? Now, it's going to be preference based on existing medical marijuana dispensaries. So, for example, if there's an existing medical marijuana facility in the county, then they are able to have that first recreational marijuana license. It'll be a dual license under the state of Arizona, which would mean that there's one additional license that can be issued in the county. And this can be a standalone facility, or it can be dual based on the local jurisdiction's requirements, okay? Now, I did talk with...
Just so everybody knows, we currently have no marijuana establishments in the city of Sierra Vista.
The city of Sierra Vista. However, ADHS did confirm with me yesterday that we actually have one in the county, which is located in Bisbee. Okay, so they would have the first preference to apply for a license for recreational marijuana. And again, there could be another one that comes in later on down the road. So really only one is available at this point, somewhere in the county that can be applied for at any jurisdiction in the county, or of course within the unincorporated areas of the county itself. Now, they will issue, Department of Health Services will also issue 26 licenses to be allocated at a later time based on the Social Equity Ownership Program. And I did look up what that meant because I wasn't really sure what exactly that was referring to. It has to do with the enforcement of existing marijuana laws, where in other words, based on the criminal enforcement of marijuana, those cities that have been hit the hardest will have the ability then to have these licenses allocated to those communities first. I'm not sure how they're going to distribute it. I don't know when this is going to happen. They have no guidelines for this yet, but it's going to happen sometime in the future. But at this point, all we're looking at is the 2 in the county right now for the early applications. So as I said, that the legislation does allow for localities to have a lot of say in terms of how these establishments can be located and regulations on some of these establishments. In fact, the particular language says that we can impose reasonable zoning regulations on marijuana establishments. So they basically have said that local jurisdictions can either prohibit marijuana establishments completely out of the city. We can allow them with a dual license, meaning that they get a license associated with the medical marijuana facility. So it'll be a dual license, and it'll be approved as such through the state. Or communities can also have standalone establishments with their own set of time, place, and manner restrictions. Now, medical marijuana establishments already have their own regulations and operating processes, and I'll go over that in just a second. If this is a standalone facility, those restrictions that we put on the recreational marijuana facilities cannot be more restrictive than what's already in place for the medical marijuana facilities. That's, again, per state law. And again, if it's a dual license, they would have the same restrictions and requirements that the medical marijuana establishments would have. So with that, let's talk about the existing.
Question.
Yes.
So just go back to that right quick. I just have a quick question. So if you have a dual license, and I just don't remember reading this in the prop, if you have a dual license, do you have to operate both, or can you operate either or?
A dual license is both.
So, well, in some cases, if you have the higher license, you can do a one or the other, but you have to have both. Is
Yes,
what? Okay.
that is correct. Okay, so let's look at the current medical marijuana dispensary cultivation and fusion operational standards. And the purpose of these operational standards is to really mitigate any type of illegal activity that may occur at some of these dispensaries. We see standards like this for adult businesses as well. Again, we're trying to mitigate some of the secondary negative effects of some of these uses. So hours of operation for medical marijuana dispensaries is 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. We don't allow any overnight type of sales going on at these facilities. The building and all adjacent areas on the property need to be lighted at night. This would include parking areas, sidewalks, things of that sort. The marijuana cannot be consumed in the building or anywhere on the property. No loitering signs shall be posted on the exterior of the buildings. And there does require proper disposal of marijuana remnants and shall not be placed in refuse containers. Again, these are all safety measures, as you will, to ensure there's any illegal activity on the property. And then let's talk about the zoning regulations a little bit for medical marijuana and then the cultivation infusion areas. So for dispensaries, medical marijuana facilities are only allowed in general commercial zoning districts. The cultivation infusion
Jeff,
areas.
let me ask you a question here.
Sure.
A while back, when they first had not the dispensaries, but the cultivation and the what we've got now, we don't have like the one in Bisbee. What's that? One in Bisbee right now that operates as a what?
It's a dispensary, a medical marijuana dispensary.
Medical.
Is it a medical marijuana dispensary? We don't have any of those in the city right now.
Correct.
What are the current zoning regulations that affect those specifically within the city of Sierra Vista?
That's what I'm referring to
Okay,
right
so
now.
this is it?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Correct. So those type of dispensaries, what we're referring to, are only allowed in the general commercial zoning districts. Now, if you have a medical marijuana cultivation or infusion facility, those are only allowed in the industrial zoning districts. Those are the places where you would grow.
And that's by our code or by the?
Our code.
Okay.
This
got it.
is all development code here now.
Okay.
Okay. In addition to which, in both situations, dispensaries and cultivation areas, they have to be located in a conspicuous permanent building, has to be easily seen and visible from a public street, not located within 500 feet of another similar use. And the big one here is not located within 500 feet of residentially zoned properties, schools, places of worship, public parks, or public community centers. So there is a kind of a buffer there, kind of a safety buffer between these type of uses and other types of uses and zoning districts.
And how do we define public community centers? For example, you could argue that the Salvation Army, because it does a number of community activities, that would be a public community center in some minds. Is that an accurate description, or is it more restricted to a civic-owned public community center, like the school, or like the Rothery Center, which is a training headquarters or a training center for the education department or the school department or the city facilities?
Well, in looking at the Salvation Army, we could also look at it as a church as well, or a place of worship, and that would
Well, I mean,
kick in.
that also qualifies, but again, if you got I want to say Good Shepherd, the homeless shelter as well as Good Neighbor Alliance could be considered a community center because they bring people in there. There's some medical facilities where they bring people in for group activities and that kind of thing as well around town. So are those public community centers? So that's just a question you don't have to answer now, but that's something
Okay.
we need to think about.
I got a quick question, if I may, Mr. Mayor Jeff, going back just a little for my clarification in my own mind, because we're outlining currently, like dispensaries only. When we say licensing, state licensing, are we gonna, is it, and Jill might know, I don't know, are we doing it like, or are they looking at doing it like liquor licenses where you have, for instance, I just wanna sell it, I don't wanna make it, I don't wanna infuse it, nothing, I just wanna be a seller, the third last person to see it before it goes to the client. Do I need the full license to be a dispensary?
The answer to the question is yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
you have to
right
have a
now,
full
we can only
license.
have 2 of those, right?
But
In the
more
whole
the
county.
future. Yeah, but more in the future,
Right, okay.
Right,
potentially.
that's
Okay.
correct.
And just to see if I'm correct here, for liquor license, it's 300 feet within these, so this is a little stricter than liquor, correct?
And that was done purposely.
Yes,
Yeah.
understood.
And
I'm
do
I'm
we-
just clarifying that we are,
Sorry, go ahead. finish.
we're being, I mean, we're not going above code, but this is what we decided a long time ago with dispensaries as medical facilities, yeah.
That's correct. And, sorry, go ahead.
Do you know if our current, we made an entertainment district, right? So
Yes, we
with
did.
this apply? I mean, if you think about applying the rules of an entertainment district to a dispensary, because we apply it to liquor licenses.
I would think it would apply. It would apply to any type of zoning, any type of
I'm not sure I
buffer
understand what the
area.
question is.
Is that,
So it like sets up the zone where, I don't know if I'm.
Well,
gonna say
so
it
like a
right, but-
bar can be within 300 feet of a church and an
If they're in the
entertainment
But that's
district.
different.
And he's asking if, she's asking if this applies to a dispensary being within 500 feet of a church in a entertainment
Entertainment
district. Am I
district.
correct, Sarah?
Yeah, that's what thank you.
Well, I think
You're
the only
welcome.
exception we made was for, what we're talking about is an exception in the entertainment district for
Bars.
bars. That's pretty well defined, I think.
yeah, I don't
We're
believe
not
there,
talking- We're not talking about having exceptions.
That's-
Resolution that you passed enacting an entertainment district was implementing state law, which gives you the waiver ability to grant an exception to the 300-foot rule for an alcoholic beverage license
Only.
only. But the principle stands if you wanted to incorporate that same premise into the legislation that you're developing, could apply for dispensaries as well.
But doesn't automatically.
It doesn't automatically.
Okay,
that would be a local,
that's a local thing.
Local
local code
decision.
amendment we would
Local
make. That's
decision,
correct.
Okay.
Oh, on that,
Good
sorry, question on that, right now, like liquor licenses come before council for approval and review. Do we have any such review of dispensary
To
license?
answer your question, no, we do not. All we have is that zoning
makes a big difference.
compliance form. If they apply for a business license or a building permit, they'd have to go through our process to obtain those licenses and meet our local code requirements in order to obtain those, but would not come at the city council level, it'll be at administrative level. And I do want to mention, we mentioned the 500-foot rule, and for comparison purposes, the buffer for adult businesses is a quarter mile to residential properties, churches. And
Break
in-
that down into feet, Jeff.
and that's in state law, so.
I'm just kidding, I'm giving you a
Okay,
hard time.
all right.
3 times 440
3 times, yeah,
yards.
yeah.
So what I want to do at this point is kind of show you the maps.
No, this, yes, but.
Okay. So this is the current buffer map at 500 feet. And you could tell at 500 feet, there's not a lot of areas in the community that a dispensary can actually locate. It's very, very limited in where it can go. And if I scroll out here, so we see most of the mall, for example, would be allowed. Some areas along Highway 92 down here.
And that's where we had one in the past, right? In that
So we
little-
had one, yes, we had one on Highway 92, next to Hanatokyo. It was there for a number of years and is no longer active. We do want to pull in here. It looks like most of Fry Boulevard would not be allowed to have a dispensary. There might be some areas over here. Looks like up at 7th Street, but for the most part, Fry Boulevard would not be allowed to have a dispensary. That's under the current rule, the 500-foot rule.
It's the green parts, right?
The green parts, that's
Okay.
correct. So the green parts are recognized general commercial zoning district properties. And then, of course, the open areas represent the areas where are not covered under the buffer, 500-foot buffer. Now, let's look at a couple different maps, different scenarios here, just for conversation purposes. So let's take a look at this map. This map basically indicates that there's going to be no buffer for churches within a general commercial zoning district. Now, this would still apply to churches in residential areas, but wouldn't apply necessarily to the storefront churches you see along Fry Boulevard here. So we'll remove that from the buffer. And if you see that, and if we do that, it does open up a lot more areas along Fry Boulevard here, on Wilcox Drive down here as well. Looks like there's some other areas along the intersection of 92 and 90 and Fry Boulevard. So, again, it's less limiting if you remove the churches from general commercial.
Oh, I have to look at it.
And then I want to show you one more map here. So let's say we reduce the buffer to 300 feet rather than 500 feet. And again, this is what we see here as well. So I think in terms of order of most restrictive to least restrictive, we'll see that the most restrictive is a 500-foot buffer. The least restrictive would be the 300-foot buffer with the GC church buffer kind of in the middle of all of that. And you see with 300-foot, it does open up a little more areas along here as well. Again, more areas along Fry Boulevard, more areas along 92. So to give you an idea then of how this is going to pan out if you decide to reduce it, there will be more areas for them to locate some of these facilities.
Question.
Sure.
We have more liquor licenses on that, don't we? I mean, than in those areas. I mean, because this map should also represent, that's the same as where alcohol can be sold, right? Or
You're talking about 300, well.
the 300-foot buffer, it applies to alcohol establishments, right?
Right, but I think the buffer is different in terms of what you have to be buffered to.
What license?
Is different from alcohol versus the marijuana.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay. So I was like, we have more.
Yeah, the residential owned properties would be the
establishments
main difference. Okay, so this would be more restrictive than the liquor license buffer that you would see. Okay.
Okay. What's the more restrictive piece? I'm sorry, I'm not.
So the existing 500-foot buffer is the most restrictive.
Yes, but I mean, what element?
Residential.
Residential, so that doesn't apply in alcohol situations. Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Thank you.
You can have alcohol.
Any more questions on the
items
maps?
within 300 feet of residential, not marijuana.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what other jurisdictions are doing in the state. So a lot of them are still writing language, writing code, even as we speak. So, but there have been a few jurisdictions that have written code relating to the legislation. The city of Surprise does have a complete prohibition on the selling or I guess the placement of these facilities. Okay. Many communities in the state are going with the dual license process, where you can have a license for medical marijuana and a license for recreational marijuana. Many jurisdictions have written that in their codes. Okay, City of Surprise, Town of Pima have a complete prohibition. So even with the dual license, they're not allowing those in the communities at all. There are some communities that are going to be less restrictive than the dual licenses. I know that Bisbee and Tucson are looking at making these things a little bit easier for dispensaries to come into those communities. I know they're still writing their codes even as we speak. So it's kind of, from my research, we see the dual licenses seem to be the majority of the communities here in the state.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry. When they make those decisions to completely prohibit, like not allow the establishments, are they cutting themselves out of the distribution of funds from the Smart and Safe Act fund?
That's a good question.
Well, they'll still be receiving the HERF funds. They'll still be receiving some of the
State
other.
shared funds.
They'll still be receiving the state share funds regardless if they don't have
They
the
won't get
dispensaries.
sales
Not the
tax.
local sales
They don't
tax.
get the local.
Yeah,
sales.
then with the
So
sales
they'll
tax.
still benefit from the other pieces that will be added to those different funds.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, they will do that.
Is there any, I don't know if you reached out to Surprise or not, or heard from, is there any feedback from the community with them prohibiting within the city limits that you know of?
Yes, so, and this is actually, the reason why they prohibited this is the reason why many other communities have limited it to dual licenses. Apart from the secondary negative effects, which I've already discussed, there has been some concerns regarding the safety of the manufacturing of marijuana within these dispensaries. I talked with the fire marshal this morning, actually. Some of the concerns is that the manufacturing of marijuana does require an open flame, like butane, for example, and there's a potential explosive element in terms of manufacturing marijuana. And so, City of Surprise, for example, stated in their ordinance pretty clearly that for health and safety reasons, because there's a potential of there being explosives in these facilities, and it'll take the time of the police and fire to respond, that they want to go ahead and prohibit it altogether within the communities. I did talk with the fire marshal this morning, and of course he has some concerns as well. But anytime somebody wants to build or have a facility within our city limits, they have to meet our building and fire codes.
Roger.
So that's already going to be a requirement, regardless of whether they come in or not. They have to meet those two code requirements. So in addition to our zoning regulations, they'll have to meet. But that, again, looking at the ordinances, that seemed to be their biggest concern with the health and safety of these facilities because of the manufacturing element of these dispensaries. So, okay, so now we're at the discussion stage. If you have no more questions regarding the presentation. So the first question I want to bring up to the council is, how do you want to proceed with this with this recreational marijuana ordinance? Do you want to have a complete prohibition, as City of Surprise did, or do you want to pursue a dual license where they would have a license with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana at the state level, like many of the other communities have done in the state? So I open that question up.
Okay,
Jeff,
well,
why-
let me referee this, Jeff, okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Have you got it, before we open discussion, do we have any comments on Jeff's presentation?
No, I think it was,
Questions on
no,
Jeff's
it was good,
Yes,
thank you,
I
Jeff.
do. On the present,
Might have.
on the last slide, why are we not also including the standalone option?
Yeah.
Well, I think we would recommend to council at least these first two options. These are the most common options that many of the jurisdictions have pursued. We can always go with a standalone option if the first two options are not valid for council.
Well, what would be the reason that just
You
because other
just-
people are doing it? That's the reason?
But not having a standalone is what you're asking.
Yeah, like
Okay.
why are we not considering?
It wasn't even put on there as an option.
Well, I do have it on here as a discussion item. If the first two options, if you don't want to go with the first two options, we can certainly look at the third option. Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is the preference of staff would be to look at these first two options first. If that's not going to
Well,
be,
actually, Mayor Mueller, members of the council, the presentation is built as a decision tree.
Right.
Okay? So, so prohibition being the most restrictive. If the council wants a prohibition, then there's really no reason to move on
I
to the
see.
next two
Okay.
options.
Right.
If you go with the middle ground with the dual licensing, then there's no reason to go to the standalone. If you want less restrictions, then you can go to the standalone option. So we're not making a recommendation, as regards your choice. That's a policy decision of the council. We're just presenting the options today.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, you were next, I think.
Yeah, I had a question on slide number 5. This has to do with cultivation at a private residence.
yes.
Talking about 6 plants if one individual, 12 plants if there's 2 over 21. But then the third one kind of puzzles me, that the plants must be located in a completely enclosed building under lock and key. Now, how is that gonna happen in most residential neighborhoods within the city of Sierra Vista? That's, that's outside of the the purview of talking about a dispensary.
Right.
But I'm looking at this and I'm going, how's that gonna happen? We're gonna have people start building greenhouses in their backyard?
Closet.
Well, it doesn't say a separate, completely
Yeah.
enclosed building.
It
Doesn't-
can be
In
a
their house.
closet
So it
according to
can be
the
a
prop.
closet,
Be a
it can be
closet
within
according
your
to the
house, or you can build a separate greenhouse that you keep under lock and key, is the way I read it.
Okay, well, it's just kind of puzzling, okay.
Well, it is, the way it's written, it is, I agree with you, it is puzzling.
It is puzzling.
And what that gets back to is that the individuals can still grow their own stuff.
Right, and I'm looking at it from a public
Well,
safety,
and how do we enforce that? The only way we're gonna be able to
Exactly.
enforce that is if we go into a house that is open
Can't do that.
based on a call or probable cause. Deputy Chief, let me know if I'm going astray here. But if we go based on probable cause and it's unlocked and it's growing in the living room and there's 6 plants, well, they're in violation of the law if in fact it's not locked, the building's not always secured.
Right.
For example, leaving the back screen door open, so kids can go out and play, et cetera.
yeah.
So.
Okay.
it's-
I just
it's gonna
thought it
be
was kind of an
It's gonna be an
interesting,
interesting enforcement conundrum for the police.
And Mr. Mayor, to reiterate that point, for the whole thing, and Chief Cosmeyer can weigh in, but it's fraught with enforcement problems. Every part of this is fraught with enforcement problems.
Right, you know, I mean, I volunteer in the evidence room at the police department, and we were talking about it just the other day, that if this law goes into effect and you have a stop, that if the person is over 21 or the person is under 21, and you're gonna have to have a scale in each squad car
Figure it out.
to figure it out, because the person could come back to get it out of evidence and then say, well, there's stuff missing here, based on weight. You know, I mean, there's a, like you say,
A lot of issues.
Oh, it's gonna be interesting.
So, getting back to, go ahead and make your comment. 'Cause I'm gonna
just-
get back to talk about prohibition and then we'll talk
Going
about
back
the
to,
next
and
one.
it kind of goes on with the standalone. I know right now we're talking about 2 licenses to start for
The county.
the county. Or do we already have licenses? Because I keep hearing the dual. Do we have licenses already established for medical marijuana? And are those licenses gonna be separate? Because we say standalone. So do I need a standalone medical marijuana dispensary license right now? And is the new licenses gonna be just for private use or private sale?
Okay, so right now, there is preference given to medical marijuana facilities, okay? But the two licenses that they're gonna issue, if there is an existing medical marijuana facility, Arizona Department of Health Services will allow the existing medical marijuana facility to apply for a recreational marijuana facility. So they'll have a dual license, okay? Which means there's one additional license out there. It does not have to be a medical marijuana facility. It can be a standalone recreational marijuana facility.
Okay, so they get that,
And that's for the short term.
they
the
get to
short term.
decide what that license is then. So we have 26 licenses and I'm gonna apply for a medical one.
No,
No, those
none.
are the extra equity ones. Those are separate.
Okay,
That
and
they
that's what
haven't
I'm
even
asking.
decided
Do we
on.
already have medical marijuana licenses?
We
Yes.
have
One,
Established.
we have one in the county.
One in the county.
Okay, so that's not gonna go into the, but if we turn that into one of the 2, then they're really not dual licenses, it's one license and what we do with it. Cause we're not separate, I don't have to have a medical marijuana license, and then I don't have to have a equity license. There's
That's not-
one license right now.
The way the prop is written,
And I
as
tried to
I
understand
understand it, is that if we have one license, no matter what type available
That's what I
left
thought.
in the county, because we already have one medical license.
That's correct.
That medical license will get preference to add recreational use, but we're not gonna get additional licenses on top of the 2
Okay,
at
so-
this point.
So really, there's not a standalone license, there's one license, and you can either do both or do one.
Th-
Am I tracking that? That's how I'm tracking
That is
it.
a dual license to do both, medical and recreational.
But there's not a standalone license.
There's a
There
standalone.
Not at the
will be
time.
There will be.
Okay,
now because
yeah.
the prop passed.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying
the
to.
prop did pass. Yeah.
There's
There
not
will
gonna be any right
Here.
away.
We got a limited number of medical licenses.
Yes.
And one in the county.
Roger.
Okay? We're not talking about adding additional medical licenses. We're talking about doing the recreational license,
Correct.
okay? So initially, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, there will be 2 of those. And the preference will be given to the medical first.
Roger. I'm
Okay,
tracking that.
We're all good there. There is potential in the future to go beyond the 2 for, what did we call that?
Recreation.
Recreational.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with the medical, additional medical, we're dealing with the
Roger.
recreational. Okay.
But there still is just one license.
Well, for our purposes today, we could prohibit the use of that one license,
Okay.
Right. Since we don't have a medical dispensary already in town.
Okay.
If we had a medical dispensary already in town, the answer would be different.
Okay. I'm tracking.
Okay, we on?
Why I'm asking is we're not, because that's brings up to your question about why we don't have standalone to prohibit. If we prohibit that license in the city, it don't matter. It's only one type of license. Because we're not separating between what they can and can't do. We're not separating them. According to the prop and according to what we said here today, you have one license and you can choose for it to be dual.
No,
That's
that's not what we're saying.
that's what the prop said.
The only
You're
way you can
reading
choose
it wrong.
to be dual is if you already have a medical license.
Or if you want to do both.
Right.
But that's what I asked at the beginning.
Medical
You
license
can't-
already exists.
You
This
can't have a
makes the
dual
other one.
Only
license
one of
and
them
only choose to
in our
do
county.
recreational.
Correct.
You have to do both.
Currently.
Right. Currently.
Was that?
Well, there is no recreational currently.
Yeah, there's no recreation
there's
currently.
So
So that's what.
we're
the conf-
talking in the future, guys. We're not
Yes.
talking about right now.
All right, I'm on track. I just,
Okay.
it's
So,
not making sense.
What I like to do is we have some options, obviously. Prohibition is one. Permitted, allowing the marijuana dispensaries in town and what the prohibition should be. And the other one was what trying to look at your chart.
Standalone.
Standalone thing. So, first I'd like to discuss pros and cons on prohibition. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to clarify right quick, Jeff, as I was walking to the bathroom, and I apologize, I wasn't going to turn around and come back at that point. But on the state shared revenue with the Safe and Smart Fund, we don't know for a fact if we prohibit it, if we will get those funds. There is precedent in Oregon of a county that's in court right now who is not getting the revenue from marijuana sales from the state because they prohibited dispensaries in their city. So I can't find it in the prop where it says anywhere, if you prohibit it, you will still receive revenues from the state Smart and Safe Fund. So I just want to clear that up because Oregon's already having this problem.
Did you find it in the prop, Jeff?
Haven't had a chance to look. We've had this discussion.
But we would
You found something?
receive
Yes.
HERF revenue.
Yes, Mr. Attorney?
I can answer that question for you. 362856 is the statute within the act that governs the Safe and Smart, what do they call it? The Smart and Safe Arizona Fund.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it doesn't distinguish between cities that are allowing it and cities that have prohibited it. It says any monies in this fund get distributed in a certain way, 33% to fire, police, et cetera, for personnel costs. Actually 33% to community colleges, 31.4% to municipal police departments. And it doesn't distinguish between those who are allowing sales and those who are not. And so it'd be my interpretation of that statute that even if we prohibit, we still share in that Smart and Safe Arizona Fund.
Okay,
And
thank
that's
you
why-
for that
And that's why he said the
interpretation.
1.95 sales tax we wouldn't get because we wouldn't be selling anything.
Correct. But I just want to say again, is that was also the county's and Oregon's determination, and it's being fought. So I mean, I think it's just too new, and there's an interpretive issue here that we haven't decided in courts.
Sure.
Okay. Pros and cons on prohibition.
A con would be that if we prohibit it, it would go against the will of the people, since Sierra Vista and Cochise County both voted in favor of the prop.
Absolutely.
By what, 54%?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, a little more in Sierra Vista than the county as a whole, but yeah.
Our
that would
city voted for this.
Well, they voted to make marijuana legal. They didn't vote for
They
a
voted,
dispensary.
they voted for the prop.
They
So that's
voted
what
for the
comes with
prop.
it.
Okay.
The majority of our city.
The counter argument to that is people are not always right when they vote.
Well, you
That may be
Mayor,
their desire, but they may not be right.
yeah, but in the favor of giving them more credit than that, I would say that, I think some of the fear comes from, you think California, or, you know, where they're like showing up like Starbucks on every corner,
Or Denver, yeah.
or Denver.
Yeah.
The way the law is written, that can't be possible in Arizona. It's gonna be a significantly lower number for forever, just because it's based on the number of pharmacies present in the state.
Yeah.
So a few more licenses will become available here and there, 1 or 2 over the years, but it's really based off the 10% of how many pharmacies are across the state, which aren't popping up every day. And so it's never gonna explode like some people fear it will.
Like it has in
We ain't gonna have
Colorado, whatever.
drive-through dispensaries anytime soon.
And putting in the zoning restrictions and stuff already curbs it so significantly. I mean, we saw the map showing that there's like hardly anywhere for them to go.
And we'll talk about this, we'll talk about the zoning restrictions in a minute. Any other comments about prohibition?
Right, yeah, go ahead.
Well, in the effort of full disclosure, I voted against this proposition. As a former prosecutor, I'm dead set against having any recreational marijuana in my town. Additionally, we received a fiscal analysis of this proposition in a late email yesterday, and I've read through it, and it's almost convinced me that we're heading down a real slippery slope here with respect to our city. I'm against it. It's gonna take some convincing for me to vote yes on this proposition. Reading through this fiscal analysis, and I hope everybody did, it was really informative that for every dollar that we benefit as a government, it's gonna cost us $4.50 down the road for treatment, for all these things. When you look at what happened in Colorado, where the traffic fatality caused by somebody impaired by marijuana went up 109% over the previous year, that's cause for my concern. And as our city manager mentioned, this thing is just fraught with all kinds of enforcement issues. And I don't want to put our police or our public safety people in this position, at least for right now. I understand we're going to chomp at the bit for a $1.95, 1.95%, but I think it's very, very, how can I say it, short-sighted on our part. That's all I have to say on the prohibition.
I think either way, we're gonna have enforcement issues, whether we prohibit a dispensary in city limits or not. We're not gonna eliminate selling from the homes. I mean, it's gonna be quick and fast and easy to get it, quick money, so that's not going away ever, just like when they prohibited alcohol. I kinda agree with one of the pros, the people voted for it. If someone wants to make a profit and open and establish a business and build a business here, I, for one, ain't gonna tell someone they can't be a businessman. But I do agree with Sarah and everyone else that said, I think making the zoning what it is gonna eliminate putting it where we don't want it. But I think prohibition is one of those off-the-table subjects, because if I can get the license, I can establish the business, I should be able to start a business in the U.S., even if that's Sierra Vista. So I think the prohibition, the con, is just too of me to say someone can't be a businessman.
I would also add that, because again, my search history, I looked up how many medical card holders we currently have in Cochise County. I couldn't get Sierra Vista specifically, but it's over 4,000. To think that we're, even those people that need it medically for chronic pain, and we're making them all leave Sierra Vista to go get something that they need, just to like manage their symptoms. I don't think that's fair either. If we have the opportunity to allow a business to come in and set up one location.
I also think that a prohibition is the policy, when you're speaking prohibition, is prohibition of having a dispensary in town. It doesn't prohibit people from using marijuana in town, because the proposition says that it's legal statewide, period. So, yes, there's gonna be a lot of years of figuring out enforcement, but that is going to happen regardless, because this is legal. Whether or not we have a dispensary in town is irrelevant to marijuana being legal, or recreational marijuana being legal.
So the question is accessibility is what you're saying.
Accessibility, because we have citizens that use it not just for medical reasons, but we have citizens in our town that use marijuana, and now they have the right to do so.
Legally.
Legally. Now they legally have the right to do so, whether or not we like it, and so, yes, I'm against prohibition adamantly.
Dr. Lander, we haven't heard from you yet.
Well, the citizens did vote yes, and I think that Councilmember Humphrey made really great points about people that do have the medical license, and they do have to travel outside of Sierra Vista, and so I would be not in favor of prohibition.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't agree with prohibition for many of the reasons we said here, and then just to add to that is just like other businesses that we have in town or that we make restrictions on, I would never frequent those, but it's not my place to tell someone they can't have it if it's legal. So I'm against prohibition in the short term.
Okay, well, I think, I know where the consensus of council is, but I want to make a statement. I quite frankly agree with most of the things that Mr. Johnson said. I am a firm believer that prohibition is the way to go. I would add one, in addition to all the other comments he made, I would add one more. I consider Sierra Vista a federal city, and by that I mean we have most of our employees are working for the federal government. The federal government has additional restrictions on personnel, especially with clearances, and we, as you all are aware, we have very sensitive things going on the installation. It allows an atmosphere for soldiers and civilians to go down a path that's going to be detrimental to them, in addition to the things that were mentioned about future medical costs and counseling costs and social issues that have come up with the abuse, not medical use, but the abuse of marijuana. So I tend to go toward the prohibition side. I just want to put that on the record. Now, the second option is permitted only as a dual license with medical marijuana dispensaries. Any discussion in support of that or against that issue? Option, I should say.
I'm not in favor of limiting, restricting the business that we couldn't even keep before, because you'd have to have a medical one. I don't know the reason that they left. Do you? I don't know. No, okay. I didn't even know we had one until all this happened. I was like, oh, there was one here. I don't know. So, I don't know. It seems to restrict it to that, require them to have both the medical and rec, seems over regulatory.
So, are you talking to me? Or I didn't know if you were pointing to him or me.
Send you an engraved invitation next time.
What?
Send you an engraved invitation next time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love that, my high maintenance self. I think this is a good compromise because there's a split. I'm trying to think of the future as things open up and as we get more and more licenses. And while we are very limited, should we choose the current guidelines, thank you, restrictions on where dispensaries can be, I think this is a nice compromise, because I think about when we were vacationing in Venice Beach one time, and like the entire area, every other shop was, you know, Mr. Green or Mr. Pot, whatever. I certainly do not want to see that for our town, just like without mentioning other business, I wouldn't want to see those either. I think this is a nice compromise where I understand where you're coming from on the standalone and we don't want to restrict, but with medical, it limits that we're going to be covered in every spot that we can be with marijuana dispensary. So I'm okay with the Juul only as far as that's concerned, because I think it's a nice middle ground.
So I just want to make sure everybody understands, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we talk about a dual license facility, we're talking about reestablishing the medical and then adding the what I keep forgetting what recreational to it, and those would have the same standards zoning wise that we have now for the medical, right?
Correct.
That is correct, unless you decide to change those
Okay,
standards.
unless we
which we'll talk
decide
about.
to change those standards, okay?
doesn't-
Any other comments? I think I have a consensus council.
I-
Any other comments?
That doesn't make sense to me as far as doing that. I mean, make them get a medical marijuana dispensary license just so that, because we said they have to. I mean, even if the same zoning restriction would apply to a standalone. So we're just making the business jump through more hoops. That's all we're doing. We're just making the business jump through more hoops to open.
Other comments? Yes, sir.
Have we had any inquiries as to opening up a medical marijuana or a recreational marijuana dispensary here in our city?
We've had inquiries about both.
Okay.
We've had both
How
medical.
many?
Well, I would say I've talked to 2 different people that wanted to open up a medical marijuana dispensary, and at least maybe half a dozen folks that wanted to open up a recreational, or an adult marijuana establishment.
Okay, that's interesting to
It's
know.
recreational.
They go in and smoke it inside?
No, never.
They
You can't do
ever
that.
smoke
Regardless, you can't do that.
Jeff, do you know if the social equity ownership program will be either, or will it be, what kind of will it just be recreational licenses?
Yeah, the way it's written, the way it's written in legislation, it applies strictly to the recreational marijuana license.
Okay, so the existing medical establishments, they get first dibs at the dual, at the rec, okay. And they're all gonna do it, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So then really, the only option left would be the recreational, if we possibly, I don't even know if anyone would qualify here, because it's very vague, and they don't have.
Yeah, we haven't established that yet.
Yeah, so I'm afraid, I don't want us to block it out if that's our only option of getting a business to come in here. I don't want us to, I would rather it stay more open to either the dual or the rec, and not in case
So you want to leave it open for options?
for either one.
That's what you and Sarah?
Yep.
Well,
That's how I
Mr.
feel too.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Bertucci.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the next decision after this, if you're not interested in the dual, would be, having standalone, but for potentially applying the same zoning standards to it as you do the medical.
And that's exactly where we're headed.
Can we clarify something really quick? So we're discussing just kind of what kind of resolution or whatever we want to draft. It'll be drafted, then it'll come back, and then public comment, something like that, or public hearing, or.
What the process here today is, we're trying to get a consensus of council so we can give direction to staff to what to draft.
Okay.
They will then draft based on our direction.
Okay.
They will come back to us with the language, further discussion, approval. There is no requirement under the law for public comment, I don't believe. Is there? Tell me what the,
Yeah.
okay, we'll just talk process then. Let's say, and I'm just gonna make an assumption here, guys. Let's say that what we want to do as a council is to allow a recreational dispensary under the current zoning code, so it's the same as the medical dispensary, okay? If that's what we want to do, and that's the guidance we give you, is to draft those comments, what is the process then from that point?
So from that point on, we will draft the language, and it'll come to you at a public hearing
Okay?
with that draft language.
And at that point in time,
It'll, yeah, it goes to Plan and Zoning Commission
That's right.
first.
It'll go to
Apologize.
Planning-
Yeah,
Planning
PNC
and
Commission will
Zoning
review it.
Commission.
They'll make the recommendation to council,
okay?
and then council then will decide whether to approve as is or make changes or reject the code amendments. It'll be a public hearing process where the members of the
Oh, it's
public
gonna
will
be
be able
heard
to
at the
come
planning
in.
zoning, it'll be heard at the planning zoning and the public.
Right.
When it comes to us, as recommendation from planning zoning, is it required to have another public hearing?
Only one public hearing is required.
So then that would be at the planning and zoning.
Well, no. One public hearing required
Council
for the
planning,
Planning and Zoning Commission and a public hearing before the city council.
So two,
Yes, two.
okay.
Okay.
For
That's what I
each
was asking.
entity.
One for each.
One for each entity.
Correct.
Okay, I got it. So, further questions on process?
Would there also be a comment period where people could,
Well, certainly, yeah, certainly the way, the public hearing is,
okay.
normally what we do is we would have the public hearing and we would wait, we wouldn't necessarily vote on it that night. There would be an open comment period, and they're gonna have two opportunities. They can comment at the P and Z, and they can comment at the open house.
okay, thanks for
If they
clarifying
put it
that.
online, they can
Yeah, and
submit
they can
comments.
do the
online.
online comment as well.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna try to speed things up here, and you guys shout me down if I'm off base. What I'm hearing is that's exactly what we wanna do, is we wanna allow, and I say we collectively, because some of us disagree. We would allow recreational dispensaries to locate in the city, and they should be at the same restriction as the medical facilities as it now exists. Am I off base, guys?
So, I think it would be medical, recreational,
Or dual.
and/or dual, right? It would be one of the three,
Correct.
is
Any one of those.
what I'm hearing.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna throw myself on my sword on that one, so if.
If a dual came in and not a rec, that'd be great.
That'd be
Well, that's
fine.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying, is
okay,
that's what
I
we're
got you.
saying,
So,
not just one or the
eight
other.
facility, singular or dual, who
Of
wants
each.
to come in, they would have the same restrictions as we have in the code now for
Medical.
the medical. And, of the reducing the 300 feet, removing for, churches, and any other additional requirements, or any further discussion on those three bullets?
No, I'm fine with the current
Okay.
buffers.
So I think where we ended up is, I hate to say this, but the council does not want to prohibit consumption, possession, and sale of marijuana in the city as outright, but in fact would allow the dispensaries, whatever form they are, and, that's kind of, what other direction you need, Jeff and Matt?
There's one other item I wanted to talk about real quick, and that has
Okay.
to do, we mentioned this earlier in the conversation, in terms of, does the council want to prohibit the consumption, possession, and sale of marijuana on all
yeah.
city?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, possession, you brought up a good point though
Yeah.
about the bus thing.
I don't.
Should we remove possession?
We'll look at the possession issue.
Okay.
And then, we'll
Consumption,
make a
yes.
recommendation as to.
And sale, yes.
Yeah, the proposition clearly states what possession is defined as and the amount, so I'm assuming that's what our code.
The other,
Would do.
So you can't even, can you prohibit possession?
You can prohibit possession over a certain amount.
Over a certain amount.
The
law does that.
You can prohibit that on city facilities too. And a bus is a city facility.
Of course,
No, we-
enforcement is going to be.
Well, see, that's the other
I don't
issue.
wanna encourage like.
Once this
frisky-
gets through, we still have to do some cleanup on park rules. So planning zone, or, Parks and Rec Commission's gonna have to get involved. and we're gonna have to look at some of the police specific things on city council, on city property, and additional training to make sure that we're doing it right. So it's gonna be all kinds of little bumps in the road and headaches as we go forward with this, if that's what we decide to do. Greg?
Yeah, just a quick one. We were discussing on slide 10 about what is a public community center? And is that specifically stated in Prop 207? Because, for example, Warrior Healing Center is a public place where people congregate.
So Jeff, is that defined?
I will take a look at our development code and see what
And
we
we
have.
need, if it's not, we need to define it.
Absolutely.
Take a shot at it, define it, and if we get involved in court, we'll get involved in court. But
Absolutely. We'll take a look. I'll
that's
bring
something
that
else
back
that
to
needs to
you.
be addressed. Thanks for
Sure, we
bringing that
have
up.
that
Thank you.
defined.
Mr. Mayor, we anticipated that the discussion regarding public places would follow on after this discussion. So what we'll probably have is a presentation about that at your next work session
Okay.
then. And then that one will follow on after the zoning issue is cleared up.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
you guys know where we're going?
Yes.
We know where we're going, whether we like it or not. Yeah, we're all going to hell, just in case you don't know that. Any other further discussion or final comments on this item? Okay, well, thank you guys for the good discussion. And this is a tough issue. But go on here. Item C is report on trips, recent trips, meetings and future meetings, which I have none. Does anybody else been to anything over? Okay. So we'll go on to future discussion items, paragraph D, and Sarah wanted to talk right off the bat about the resolution. Sarah?
I did, thank you. I'm gonna pass out a copy.
I'm not gonna read these.
That's okay. I don't know where William went.
We'll get him back.
Okay, or if we should wait for William.
They almost made it to the half hour mark.
I know.
We'll be
We were
back
right
then.
at the end. Well, I don't know.
Go ahead and introduce.
Okay, so, I think that our council should show leadership and, make a resolution supporting a peaceful transition of power, on January 20th. And I drafted a resolution for our council to take. I tried to keep it very simple and to the point, and, would welcome your feedback or thoughts on whether or not we might place this on the agenda for Thursday.
Okay, I'll give everybody a chance to read through it, but I just mentioned that this is a resolution from council. And what we're looking for, once everybody has a chance to read this, is a consensus to put it on the agenda for Thursday. If we have consensus put it on Thursday, we'll put it on Thursday's agenda. If we don't have a consensus, it won't be on the agenda for Thursday. So I'd like to ask you to take a minute to read this, and then we have when you're ready, we'll have some discussion. And I'll just say the same things I talk about when we talk about resolutions. If we're gonna do a resolution like this to be effective and have any impact, we need to have a large majority of the council behind it, number one. And it needs to be succinct and to the point.
Just what I did. I
And,
tried
and,
to be succinct and to the point.
and it's only gonna be effective if we are united in something like this. Obviously, a 4-3 decision is not gonna be impactful.
And I will say that I personally felt that, or definitely feel that this is a time for us to show leadership. I feel like we're not seeing leadership in other areas, but to show that we support a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th.
Could I ask you to just read it into the record?
Yep, I'll read it into the record. We were shocked and disgusted by the attack at the United States Capitol that took place on January 6th. The violent and disgraceful demonstrations at the United States Capitol that resulted in the death of a Capitol Police officer was a desecration of the people's house, and all involved should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. This was a direct attack on our nation's democratic process and cannot stand. We affirm our support for the outcome of the 2020 elections and confidence in the legal processes undertaken to ascertain that the election was properly conducted. And we urge all in our nation to move past the hateful, divisive, and incendiary rhetoric and come together for a peaceful transition of power, which has been a cornerstone of our democratic process since our founding.
Okay, any discussion? Well, I'm inclined to put it on the agenda.
I don't.
Is
I'm not
that third
comfortable.
paragraph necessary?
Yeah.
What was that?
The third paragraph. Is it necessary?
We're hoping,
Yeah, this is for discussion, guys.
Okay, so Sarah, I was looking at this and thinking about it, and I remember back in February of 2019, I believe it was, I think it was 2019, when Councilmember Calhoun came to us and asked us to disavow the concertina wire at the border wall. We as a council, at that point decided that was not within the purview of council. And that was a consensus of council at that point. And in thinking about it and going through it, I will speak personally for myself on this issue. I agree with everything you say in here. Absolutely think that what happened was a horrible thing. When I look at it for the council as a whole, I don't see it furthering the business of council for our role in what we're supposed to do. So that's my take and opinion on it.
Okay. I see him not shaking there, head shaking. Anybody else? Comments?
I think that standing up for the voice of our citizens who cast ballots in this election is part of our business. And an attack on that process is our business to stand up and show leadership, that we as a council won't stand for it, and that we want to see a peaceful transition of power. I think that's our responsibility as elected officials to stand up and show a strong voice there.
And I understand that. We did, as a body, do our job and our role in certifying the election.
Local election.
The local election,
And-
which is within our duties to do, and we did do that.
And Sarah, you were really good about in your comments pointing out that we had a fair election here in Cochise County. We've all, seen how that's been done, and I think most of us have been at an open house, and that we trust that the election was fair, and we can speak on that here.
So that gets back to Greg's question about the third paragraph. Would it change anybody's mind if that was eliminated in the resolution?
The third.
Would not
which one is
change
the
mine.
third paragraph? I'm sorry.
We
1, 2.
affirm your support of the outcome of the
Yeah, you can
2020
take that out.
election.
2020 elections and confidently possibly taken to answer. That was the third one, right, Greg? That's what we're
Yes.
talking
That's
about.
correct.
I don't know.
Elections properly
It-
conducted.
It
I
wouldn't
kinda-
change my mind
still
on
think-
my opinion.
Okay.
Aren't we all? I mean, hopefully we're all disgusted by what happened.
Well, I don't think that's
So that's
a
we don't
question.
need to say it, right? We
Yeah.
don't like.
I just don't understand
What's
the
the-
purpose other than just making a statement, which we all should be
that's what I'm
doing as
trying to say.
leaders in the
What's the point?
community.
Agree.
I don't understand the purpose of doing it as a
As a
collective
collective
body.
body.
Okay, that sounds.
It's more powerful and has a bigger impact and shows unifying to make a collective body resolution.
And as we discussed when we met, I will share with the rest of the group that the longer it takes to respond to something like this, the weaker the response is. So, Greg, I think we heard from you. Dr. Landry, what are you thinking?
Sorry, throw you guys right into the fire,
Yeah.
first meeting,
First meeting.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to respond right now. I mean, I do agree that was, that's a terrible thing that happened and stuff, and that, but, like, I don't know what happened, like, in 2019, like resolutions and things like that, a little bit.
Okay, well, what I'm hearing here, just listening, is we don't have a consensus. Okay, I don't think we disagree with the statement, but we don't have a consensus as to whether it should be a resolution or not. So I'm inclined not to add it to the agenda for Thursday.
You want to put that to a vote, Mr. Mayor?
You can't
You can't vote,
vote.
you
We're in a
can't
work
vote in a work
session.
session.
Okay.
It would only be a vote if we put it
If
on
we
the
wanna
agenda.
if we wanna have a vote, we have to put it on the agenda,
Got it.
okay?
Got it.
Now,
I knew it
let's
this
talk,
way.
let's talk about this, the consequences. Let's say we put this on the agenda and we get a 6-0, 6-1, 5-2 vote, we're all good. However, we bring it up, and these are political considerations, we put it on the agenda and we vote it down, and we all, as a group, tend to agree with the statements in this, but we don't think it's the council's role. How is that gonna, that's something we need to think about as well. So, right, that's why I tend to not want to do resolutions like this, unless it's a immediate, a thing that's focused specifically on Sierra Vista, and I think that's the point over here, is it's not specifically, it's a national issue. Obviously, we're all concerned about it, and upset about it, but, what really is the impact of doing a resolution? And, so I'm inclined right now, unless you guys can tell me one by one that I'm wrong, that what I read the council consensus is we don't have a consensus.
That's how I'm hearing it.
Okay. So the options in, Sarah, like we talked, if we didn't have consensus, you certainly can make a statement and express your views, which most people don't disagree with on this council, at the end of the council meeting when you get your chance to speak.
Okay,
Okay?
I will do so.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your efforts and your good thoughts there. There's a lot of work went into that. Next thing I got real quick is the draft liaison assignments for the council. If you pass this to him, you got yours already?
Yes, sir.
If you pass that to the other four. And what I'd like you to do is I've got the draft, and the reason it's in draft is I want you to look at the liaison assignments. If you have issues with them, come talk to me before next Monday, because there are a couple of these where we have to actually put a notification to the Upper San Pedro Partnership and the MPO as to who is gonna be the board or the representatives for the city for the next 2 years. So look at those. If you got heartburn with them, come talk to me. I don't have a problem if, for example, Mr. Johnson doesn't like what he got and Angelica doesn't like what she got. Maybe they do some swapping, and if they both come to me and say, hey, we think this will work out better, and they can convince me, I want them to make changes. Okay? And those who have been on council for a long time realize this list is a whole lot shorter than it was last time, because we changed the way we do commissions. So I would ask you, get with me before close of business on Monday, because on Tuesday morning, we're gonna start sending out the notifications to those two groups. Any other future discussion item or council requests? Okay, I'm gonna ask Mr. Patuchik to talk a little bit about our COVID status.
Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. As we expected, following the holiday season and the gatherings of groups and families, the entire state of Arizona, Cochise County, and Sierra Vista, unfortunately, have experienced a sharp increase in the number of cases of COVID that we're experiencing. The hospital is full, and there's been a lot of ramifications from that. Unfortunately, that spike has also impacted city staff, and as of yesterday, and I don't have an update currently, but we were up to 18 positive cases, a number in quarantine, and a number under testing protocols right now. That is the highest number that we've experienced since it started, and it has affected the city across all city departments and facilities. As a result, we met with the department heads this morning and have implemented closure of all lobbies and facilities, and we're going back to the protocols that were in place earlier this summer, such as curbside service at the library and instituting online and other payment options for people coming into City Hall. So right now we're maintaining the status of the outdoor facilities and uses to continue. We haven't really seen a problem with outdoor usage. And usage at the transit center, we'll just have to monitor, but we'll continue to run the transit services as well. But I'm afraid that if we allow things to keep going the way they are, we'll run into a situation like we had at the Ethelberger Center and OICC and now the Cove, where we simply don't have the staff to operate the facilities in place because of the number of people that are out. So I think this will probably have to remain into effect for a while. The vaccines are on their way. That's been a difficult thing for us because the priorities for who is receiving the vaccine, the amount of vaccines, where they're going to be distributed, when, how, changes pretty much on a daily basis. And it makes it very difficult for us to get that information out to the public. And we are trying very hard to work with the county health department to get that, and Victoria's monitoring that for us. We have our 1A group, fire department, and now police department that are eligible to receive that, and we're getting about 40% participation rates in that, which is a little disappointing, but hopefully as people see that it is safe, which so far it seems to be, that will increase our participation rates. And then our plan is to get our other frontline employees in line right away. As we do that and we get good participation rates, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to open up our facilities. At that point, the government will have done everything it can do for people, and it's up to them whether or not they want the vaccine, and we should be able to get our facilities back open. So that is the hope right now. Unfortunately, I think that's going to take a good month or so before we start seeing that occur. So we're kind of in this boat with everybody else, and we have the dual responsibility of keeping the community safe and also keeping our employees safe at the same time. And it's a difficult one to walk, but I feel we need to do this at this point in time.
Last time I talked about this was last meeting, and I talked about the word vigilance. And vigilance alone isn't getting the job done. We need to make sure that the people know the information or get the information. One of the things that has concerned me, and I think we got a resolution, is that the only way to find out whether you could get scheduled for a shot was to go on the county website. I know we have particularly older folks that may not have access. So I heard today that the paper is going to go ahead and print the phone numbers at the county that are available today, the 1-800 to go ahead and also schedule via telephone, not just but via computer, so that the people can get their shots. And I think we're down to 1B is the category now, Chuck. and that'll continue through the 22nd, and hopefully us guys in 1C will be able to do that immediately thereafter. And I've already heard that there's some folks that have been in the line long enough to get their second shot, or they're pending. So it's well underway. We just need to remain vigilant and careful and still do the testing and still do the tracing that's necessary to make sure that our employees are safe as well as our citizens are safe. So it's still not a good thing, but we're getting better. Did you have a question?
Just a request, can I get a second chance or mulligan for item D, future discussions?
Yeah, sure.
And I apologize, yeah. In light of things going on right now, we just lost another business that was an established business in our community with Outback, and it kind of ties in with COVID, so. And I know this was brought to council a while back before I was on council. I'd like to see if the council wants to sit down and talk about adding the Economic Development Commission. I think having business leaders come together to try to find ways to keep them alive in this, more than what we can do as a group, is helpful going forward in this time and age, or we're gonna keep losing the Outbacks, we're gonna lose the Texas Roadhouses, which a year from now, I'm scared to see what we're gonna look like unless we start coming together as city and businesses to come up with solutions and ways to do this. So I'd like us to be able to freely discuss it and see what people think and go forward with it.
Okay, I think that's a discussion that's worthy of having. The question is when do we do that? And when is obviously we need to get Tony involved and Mike. We need to look on their schedule, see when we can do that sometime. That's also would be a good discussion to bring up during the council retreat,
Roger,
and get at least establish a framework for the future discussion between the council members.
Roger.
And then we can go forward from there. So that maybe that's the best way to do it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anybody got any objections to that? With seeing nothing else before us, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Good discussion today, guys. And staff, thank you.